All right, so today we're going to take a deep dive into the latest RegASK release, September 2024.
Okay.
And, we know you're busy out there, so we want to make sure we get right to the heart of, what's changed, why it matters to you.
Absolutely.
And how you can actually use this stuff in your day-to-day.
Yeah, I think this is a really big release for RegASK, especially for their users.
Yeah.
It's all about kind of taking control of what feels like an increasingly chaotic regulatory landscape.
For sure. And one of the things that jumped out at me right away when I was looking at the release notes was this whole dynamic user management section. And, I got to be honest, at first glance, it sounded a little jargony.
Sure.
Dynamic user management, like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds fancy, but when you actually break it down, it's like, oh, this is actually really useful.
Right.
So essentially what it lets you do is tailor the information that you see in RegASK to your specific role and your responsibilities within your organization.
Okay, so less noise, more
It's exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, you're not seeing every single regulation update under the sun. You're just seeing what's pertinent to you.
I'm already on board with that.
Right. And it's also a big deal for security, too, because it means that admins have much more fine-grained control over who has access to what information.
That makes sense.
They're calling it service coverage, which is basically like defining the boundaries of your regulatory world within RegASK.
So if my team primarily focuses on, let's say, environmental regulations for manufacturing in Europe,
right,
we can set things up so that we're only seeing updates related to that specific area.
Exactly. You're creating essentially a custom filter for your regulatory intelligence.
Oh, very cool.
And it gets even more granular than that with what they call scopes,
Okay.
which are basically like mini focus areas within your broader service coverage. So you could even, within that environmental regulations for European manufacturing,
Right.
you could create subscopes for specific materials or processes.
Wow. So it's like a hyper-personalized regulatory newsfeed, but for your entire team.
Pretty much, yeah.
I like it.
No more kind of wading through irrelevant updates or wondering if something slipped through the cracks.
Exactly. Yeah, that fear is real.
And here's where it gets kind of visually interesting, I think, for folks.
Okay.
They've added this whole visual element to user management with what they're calling org structure diagrams.
All right, so we're talking flowcharts and diagrams here.
Yeah, you're not just setting these roles and scopes in a vacuum.
Okay.
You're actually seeing how your team is structured for regulatory work.
So for a visual learner like myself, this is already like perking my ears up.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Trust me.
Yeah.
Think departments, roles, who reports to whom, it all gets mapped out visually.
Okay.
And remember those scopes and service coverage settings we were talking about?
Yeah.
They all kind of tie into this.
Okay, so my brain is a little fuzzy on how it all connects. So let's unpack this org structure thing a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Break it down for me.
So let's start with departments. Think of those as kind of your company's knowledge hubs.
Okay.
Right? So maybe you've got one for environmental compliance, another one for financial regulations, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, makes sense.
Each department kind of houses the experts in that particular field.
Right, so you're dedicating space for each of these different areas of regulatory focus.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then within those departments, you have roles.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really specific about responsibilities. So instead of just having like a generic compliance officer,
Right.
you might have a senior environmental analyst or a financial reporting specialist. So each role has really, really clear duties tied to that department.
So no more ambiguity about who does what.
Exactly.
Okay. I can already see how that would reduce a lot of confusion potentially and boost accountability as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then the final piece of the puzzle is what they call user assignments. And this is where you're basically matching specific people to those really clearly defined roles within their department.
Right.
And the reason this is so powerful is because when you have the right people in the right roles, armed with the right information through those custom scopes,
Right.
it creates a really, really nice synergy.
It's like you're setting your team up for success before they even log in.
Right. And speaking of setting up for success, we got to talk about task management in this release.
Okay.
Because, staying on top of regulatory to-dos can be a bit of a nightmare sometimes.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
I think for anybody who works in a regulated industry, just hearing the phrase, compliance deadline can send shivers down your spine.
Oh, for sure. It's like instant stress.
That is.
But it seems like RegASK has been listening because they've made some really nice enhancements to the task management system.
Okay, good.
It's all about making your life easier.
Give me the highlights here.
So picture this, you get hit with this massive new regulatory alert, tons of information actions to take multiple teams involved.
Yeah.
In the past, this might have meant like a chaotic email chain,
Yeah.
missed deadlines, maybe even some panic phone calls.
Been there, done that.
Right.
Not a fun place to be.
So enter RegASK's updated task management system.
Okay.
They now have what they call subtasks.
Okay.
So instead of having one giant overwhelming task, you can break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay.
Assign each subtask to a specific person with a clear deadline.
Right.
And suddenly that regulatory mountain doesn't seem so impossible to climb.
Yeah, dividing and conquering.
Exactly.
Much better approach.
Right.
But then how do we make sure that with all of this, delegation, if you will, how do we make sure everyone stays on the same page?
Yeah, communication is key.
Right.
That's why they've also enhanced their task sharing features.
Okay.
You're not just blindly forwarding a task to someone. You can add a personalized message.
Okay.
You can highlight exactly what needs to be done, why it's important, and by when.
So it's not just a, hey, can you take care of this? It's a, hey,
Exactly.
this is what I need you to do.
Precisely.
By when and why.
Yeah. No more wondering if they actually read your email or if they missed the key detail.
Right, exactly. And then taking that a step further, I imagine that there's some functionality for actual collaboration on these tasks within the platform.
Remember those discussion sections that they added to the reg alerts
Yeah.
a while back?
Mhm.
Well, they brought that functionality to tasks now.
Okay.
So you can have threaded discussions right within the task itself, tag specific team members, even attach relevant documents.
Oh, that's nice. So you don't have to go digging for it
Exactly.
in your inbox.
No more sifting through those endless email chains to find that one crucial email
Right.
from 6 weeks ago.
It's like having a project management tool built into your regulatory platform.
Yeah, it's pretty slick.
That's great.
So we talked about wrangling the tasks. Now, what about the reg alerts themselves?
Yeah. Any cool updates on that front?
Always cool updates when it comes to reg alerts.
What's got you excited?
So it seems like they really took the user feedback to heart with this one.
Good.
And they supercharged some of the key features.
Okay. Let's hear it.
So first up, remember those discussion sections I just mentioned for tasks?
Yeah.
They've taken them to the next level for reg alerts.
Okay.
You can now tag team members directly within an alert.
Oh, cool.
Spark a targeted conversation right then and there.
I like that.
Right.
So you don't have to wait to get to the task. You can just immediately start hashing it out right in the regular.
Exactly. It's like having a virtual war room, but for staying on top of regulatory changes.
Very cool. What else we got?
So remember that share alert feature?
Mm-hmm.
They've also given that an upgrade.
Okay.
Just like with tasks, you can now add a personalized message when you share an alert with a colleague.
Okay.
So again, it's about adding that context and focus, not
Yeah.
just saying, hey, look at this.
Right. It's more like, hey.
This might be important for X, Y, and Z.
Exactly. Like this particular section of this alert might be relevant to the work that you're doing on project whatever.
Right, yeah.
Much more helpful.
And then to help you manage all of this information, because it can be overwhelming, they've added a bunch of new filters for reg alerts.
Well,
Remember service coverage,
yes.
industry region keywords, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can now use those same criteria to filter your alerts.
Okay.
You can also filter by tasks, comments,
Oh, cool.
even specific users.
So it's like having a personal assistant for your reg alerts.
Yeah, pretty much.
I like it.
So speaking of helpful assistants, we got to talk about RegASK,
Yes.
the AI-powered research assistant.
Yeah. Everyone's favorite topic these days, AI.
It's all the rage.
So what's new in the world of AI-powered regulatory intelligence?
They've given RegASK a serious brain power boost in this release,
Okay.
all focused on making your regulatory research smarter and more efficient.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so one of the coolest new things is the analytics dashboard. Oh, interesting.
Have you ever wished you could see exactly how your team was using RegASK?
Mm-hmm.
What features they were engaging with the most?
Yeah,
Now you can,
that's cool.
it's not just about finding the information, it's about understanding how your team is interacting with it.
Right, you get those insights into, okay, well, this is how people are actually using the tool.
Exactly.
Very cool.
On a more practical level, they also finally tackled the beast that is chat history management within RegASK.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've definitely gotten lost down the rabbit hole of like my past RegASK searches.
It can be a black hole.
Yeah, what did they do?
No more endless scrolling
Okay.
or vague session titles. You can now rename your RegASK research sessions
Oh, nice.
so you can easily find them later.
That's great.
So think EU Chemical Regulations Q3 2024 instead of just Session 17.
Right, exactly. Yes, much better.
And best part, you can finally delete those old sessions.
Oh, thank goodness.
You no longer need to have so many that are just like, why is this here?
Taking up space.
Get out of here.
Right, just cluttering up your view.
Okay, so some nice quality of life improvements there with RegASK.
For sure.
I like it. But before we move on, I do want to touch on data because we've talked about all of this information that's within RegASK. But what about extracting it, analyzing it,
right?
Really digging into the nitty-gritty?
You're speaking, my language data is power.
It is.
Especially in the world of regulatory compliance.
Right.
And RegASK has definitely stepped up their game in this release when it comes to data accessibility and analysis.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of data tools are we talking about here? So we're talking more than just like viewing the data within the platform.
Oh yeah, way more.
Okay.
Remember those super specific scopes we talked about? Like tailored to your industry, your region, even down to the keyword level? Well, now imagine is able to export all of the reg alerts that fall under a particular scope as a CSV file.
Okay, so for all the data heads out there, that's like music to their ears.
Right.
Nice little CSV export.
And they've really upped their CSV game in this release.
Okay.
It's not just basic alert summaries anymore.
Oh.
You can export all sorts of data points.
Like what?
Think timestamps for when alerts were created.
Okay.
Any expert assessments that are attached to them. The priority and impact levels that your team has assigned.
Right.
Whether there are any active discussions happening. Even if there are tasks linked to the alert.
That's a lot of data.
It's a gold mine for analysis and reporting.
I can already see the data analysts listening to this being like, yes, give me more.
Getting ready to fire up their spreadsheets.
Exactly. Because then you can really start to dig in and identify trends for specific areas.
You could generate a report showing how your team has been responding to high priority alerts.
Right.
The possibilities are kind of endless.
Yet you're really getting the raw ingredients to kind of cook up some really interesting data insights.
And it all comes back to that theme of empowerment through information, right? RegASK is giving you the tools to not only stay informed, but to really understand, analyze, and ultimately take control of your regulatory world.
Yeah, you're not just managing the information anymore, you're actually using it to make decisions.
Exactly.
And to take action.
And to work smarter, not harder.
Yes, 100%. So for our listeners who are now like champing at the bit to get their hands on all of these cool new features, what's the best way for them to get started?
So RegASK has actually put together some fantastic resources, including updated user guides and even some short tutorial videos.
Nice.
You can find all of that on their website.
Excellent. And for those who are maybe a little bit more hands-on, I always say, just dive in.
Yeah.
You know, don't be afraid to poke around.
Play around with the settings.
Exactly. You never know what you might discover. Awesome. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up this deep dive into RegASK's September 2024 release notes.
It's been fun.
It has. We covered a lot.
As always.
As always. But hopefully you found this informative, engaging, maybe even a little bit inspiring. And hopefully you learned a thing or two about how to better manage that crazy world of regulatory compliance.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. Well, until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay in control of your regulatory world.